Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Exploring Marketing Research, Chapter number 7, Part 2. Secondary Data Research in a Digital Age. Learning objectives for this chapter are to discuss and give examples of various internal and proprietary sources of secondary data, to discuss the channels of distribution for external sources of secondary data, to identify and give examples of various external sources of secondary data. Secondary data means data gathered and recorded by someone else prior to and for a purpose other than the current project. Thus, secondary data is often historical, already assembled, needs no access to subjects. Sources of secondary data. Secondary data are either internal to the organization or external. Modern information technology makes this distinction seem somewhat simplistic. Some accounting documents are indisputably internal records of the organization. Researchers in another organization cannot have access to them. External data. External data means that data is created, recorded, or generated by an entity other than the researcher organization. So external data can be gathered by government and it is already available with the government. External data means trade association has gathered some data that is available with the trade association. So nowadays one can access these data with the help of browser. Sometimes some data is freely available, but mostly the researcher has to purchase the data from these sources. External data, we are talking about the sources for external data. Nowadays, libraries are available and external data is available with several reports. The internet can be accessed to seek the external data. Vendors, there are some vendors who can make this external data available. Producers are also there. Books and periodicals. So these are all the sources for external data that a researcher can acquire. External data, once again, government sources, media sources, and commercial sources. These are three major sources from which external data can be acquired. Commercial sources. Market share data, companies like AC Nielsen provide information about sales volume and brand share over time. Demographic and census updates. Many organizations supply census updates in easy to use custom format. So nowadays, a lot of data is available and organizations can purchase that data for the sake of their own research. Commercial sources, attitude and public opinion research. Syndicated services report the findings of opinion poll. Consumption and purchase behavior data is also available. Advertising research, readership and audience data is also available. So commercially, this type of data is available and researcher can purchase this type of data and researcher can use this type of secondary data for its project. Single source data. Information technology development has made the life easier. Now researcher can use the data from a single source and diverse type of data offered from a single source. For example, television viewing and scanner purchase data, Prism and Cluster Plus, etc. So all this type of data is available from single source, and nowadays it's very easy for the researcher to buy or access data from a single source. Global secondary data. As business has become global, so has the secondary data industry. Global data is available in several countries. However, it has limitations. International researchers should watch for certain pitfalls that can be associated with foreign data and cross-cultural research. So, global secondary data means there is the availability of global secondary data, but the typical limitation with this secondary data is additional pitfalls. Sometimes it can be unavailable. Sometimes the accuracy of this secondary data is questionable, and there can be lack of standardized terminology for global secondary data. So researcher must be careful about this global secondary data. Thank you. That's all for part 2.